Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Net podcast. I'm your host Brian. Joining me today is a special guest out of Indiana, Nick DiBlasi. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. And actually, you had reached out to me not too long ago because you actually wanted to come on the podcast as well because you're actually a music creator.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I just started back in January, so pretty excited to have content already out there for people around the world to listen to.
That's pretty sweet. And actually, it's congratulations in order because did you release your full-length album on July 25th?
Yes, I did. Yes, Analog Memories dropped anywhere you could stream music, basically.
That's pretty sweet. Congratulations there, man.
Yeah.
And
Thank
here's
you.
hoping for a bright future because I know you just started out on this journey, right? So I imagine it's going to be a bit of a hard climb, get up to the top and what they would say.
Right, yeah. I'm okay just staying humble, honestly, where I am right now, just, having a few followers, few listeners. Anybody else that wants to tune in, I'm more than happy to share my music.
Well, then you are a data trooper, so all right. So, Nick, welcome to my podcast right here. The way my podcast works is we like to get to know people both as the musician, or in this case, the creator, and as the individual, too. So, just going to do that for answering all these questions. You ready?
Okay. Yeah, sure thing.
All right. So, I'll start with the first one. Who is Nick DiBlasi, and how did he get up to being a music creator and everything?
So, I've lived in southern Indiana all my life, and as far as music goes, I came from a very musical family. My mom plays the piano, dad played the guitar. Two older brothers that they were both in the school band, and so it was just one of those things that growing up, it was something that they did. Didn't really think too much about it, and then played in the school band. Whenever I was a junior in high school, started playing bass and electric guitar, and a few years ago started working on the piano. And it's one of those things. I love expressing myself through music. As far as who I am individually, I mean, if you listen to my music, if you look at the lights in the background, I'm a nerd. I love video games. I love all kinds of movies. It's one of those things. It's my personality.
Were you like in any other cover groups or like any sort of bands before jumping into this solo project you've been rolling with?
Whenever I was in college, I was in a classic rock cover band, and I played bass for them. It was one of those things. It was a great experience because they wanted to have it sound almost exactly like the recording, and so the lead guitarist is doing the solo to Sweet Child of Mine, note for note, and so they wanted us to have that exact same thing. So playing the bass, it really pushed me to challenge myself and learn music that I wouldn't typically play on a day-to-day basis. And just to be able to do it from memory, too. Our practices would be 3 hours a night, once a week. And it was a great time. We played together for about a year and a half. We only had a few gigs, but, hey, music's music. Any chance to play with anybody is a good time.
Amen to that. And actually, which part of Indiana are you in? Are you close to Indianapolis?
I'm actually a couple hours south of Indianapolis. I'm near Paoli, Indiana.
Because how is it this time of the year?
Hot and muggy. It definitely feels like summertime.
Yep, it's mid-July, and it's a hot summertime and everything, too, and it's kind of been the same out here, but we've actually had some rain the last couple of days, but it seems like coming unexpectedly. I don't even know how accurate my phone is, to be honest, because I've been looking at my weather app. It's been saying Saturday 50-50, but, like, Friday and Sunday it was supposed to be all sunny and everything, too. So I'm like, what gives? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess, did you guys get hit with any of that smoke that was coming out of Canada from all those wildfires that were coming about?
Yes, last couple of weeks it's been pretty bad. About a month ago, I was in Indianapolis, and I mean, you couldn't even see a few city blocks. And down around here, we have a Patoka Lake, man-made lake, beautiful setting for people to go on vacation, and people are sharing photos of just how hazy it is. Air quality is terrible. I feel bad for anybody with any respiratory issues.
Oh, do you have, like, the asthma problems as well?
I don't, but I know a few of the people that I work with, they do, and it's hard on them. And it makes yard work this time of year especially not fun.
Yeah, I gotta say too. I would say, ironically, Pittsburgh, it was always like a perpetual fog in a way. I made actually one boneheaded decision of actually taking my routine walk whenever I go into the office at work. And funny enough, that was actually when they were actually getting close to starting doing furry con, believe it or not. So you're seeing all these furries walking around all over the place. But I just remember, like, this doesn't feel right. I'm feeling somewhat woozy, but I kept going. I at least got the whole walk in, so it was at least a nice workout and everything, too. But it was strange, really. In fact, I was, like, just seeing the sun up there. It's like just a bright orange light bulb, to be honest. So it was kind of freaky. So
Some of those pictures, especially out of New York, I mean, it's almost like something you would see in Blade Runner. I mean, just the orange haze that engulfs everything. It's just, it doesn't feel real, but here we are living through that.
I'm actually very happy you brought that up because I think I was like seeing like pictures of New York City, and it was like I think it was in like a span of 3 hours or something like that. 1 hour it was like how a typical day would look. Then it started getting like pretty hazy and that sort of thing. Then like the third picture was like what you would see Blade Runner, or what would you call absolute hell, to be honest. I was like,
Yeah.
or like how California was with like those wildfires and like plague in San Francisco and everything. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's good to see you're all right too. So hopefully you and everybody else are doing okay. But getting back into the music, I guess. What sort of gear do you use? Because you said you actually did play piano a little bit. Did that help you with the MIDI keyboard, I guess?
Yes, it did. Growing up, I was in elementary school, and one summer my mom kind of insisted that me and my brothers practice piano at least 30 minutes a day. So my brothers took lessons. I just had the music books left over from that. And so you play a melody with the right hand, play a melody with the left hand, and then you try to do simultaneously. Well, in fourth grade, I really didn't have much taste in music, so it was just kind of like, I don't want to play these old standards anymore, so I kind of gave up on that. 2015, just sat down, and I was familiar with the placement of the keys on the keyboard, so that's half the battle, and just kind of worked from there. I had a decent ear for music at that point, and just kind of worked on learning some Coldplay. So what I use is a Nectar SE25 keyboard. Got that on Amazon back in December, and I kind of went the cheaper route just because it was going to be a hobby. I had no idea where this was going to go. I didn't want to spend a couple $100s on something that was just going to gather dust. And after the first week, I was kind of afraid that's what it was going to be. But the more time that I spent on it, it just kind of fell into place.
That's good to hear.
And
Actually,
for music, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say mine was actually the AK MPK Mini. In fact, it's actually been sitting here the whole time. It's been collecting dust, so I'm afraid. Unfortunately, I fell into the hobby route, as you would probably say. But what were you gonna say? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what were you gonna say?
No, that's fine. For the software, I use Bitwig Studio. It's a company that's out of Germany, and again, it was just something. It was paired up with the keyboard on Amazon, and it's. At first, it was a little bit intimidating just because I'd never used music editing software before, especially something as in-depth as this. But after a day or two of poking around, it was a good experience. I would definitely recommend that for anyone that's wanting to start off. That's a good beginner program.
I guess, did you have to take any sort of classes for the mixing and mastering and all those sorts of things too? Because I'm just looking at it too, and I'm like feeling like this is a little intimidating. So I don't know. Is this really something I want to be doing with my life? So I guess, what'd you do?
So I just looked up tutorials online, just get ideas of how to mix things, how to play with some of the different buttons and knobs in the system. And again, it's just kind of, if it sounds okay, go with it. And if it starts to distort or if it sounds bad, back off a little bit. So it was a lot of fun experimenting and just seeing what worked and what didn't.
I would say the one tutorials I was looking up was, you know, the guy on YouTube named Ocean?
No, I don't think I do.
He actually does a lot of the hip-hop sort of like rap sort of beats or trap beats, whatever. All sorts of the R&B and those sorts of beats as well. But he was the one I was like looking up too, because first off, he was using the same software I was using with Logic Pro. Mm-hmm. And I guess, did you change your software, or are you still rolling with the same software you've been rolling with since you started?
It's been the same since. It's been reliable, and it's at this point, if it's not broken, I'm not going to try to fix it.
All right, fair enough. I would say he was using the same software I was using, because I'm thinking, like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, because I'm assuming you're using MIDI notes as well, obviously with the little keyboard and everything too. So, and I'm just seeing him doing all this. I'm thinking, like, how does he even do that? I'm having a hard time just trying to like construct the chord, and I got Captain plugins, which it does seem like a good thing, but unfortunately, I just can't find the time to like study it down and like try to figure out all this and that. So it would be nice, I guess. Have you heard of Captain plugins?
Yes, I actually have a couple friends that they've used his resources, and definitely want to check it out for myself sometime.
I guess, what's been their opinion of it? They like it pretty well?
Yes, they do. I think that they use it in some of their music too. They have their stuff posted on SoundCloud, and it definitely makes a difference.
It works, so that's all that matters at the end of the day. All right, that's pretty cool. And I guess, getting into your music, I guess, Is it
Yeah.
Sunset 89, or is that just a hashtag name that you're kind of rolling with? I guess what's your band name or
That's the band name that I'm going with.
Sunset 89?
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
what's it mean really?
Well, I was born in 1989, so we're real creative on that part. But just kind of the name, I wanted to encompass that feeling in the music, just something that kind of took you back to yesteryear, just the pop culture. And that's really what that genre is all about, retrowave, synthwave. It takes you back to those kind of games, those kind of movies, how excited you were to get home from school, play with your action figures, and just, that kind of nerdy nostalgia. I just, you hear that name, you think, man, that sounds pretty relaxing. Hopefully it came across in the music. But
Yeah, you did say you're real big into the video games. Were you big into Sony? I guess, what sort of video games do you mostly play with?
Just about anything, honestly. My wife and I are both fans of PlayStation. That's our go-to. One of our favorite games to play is Spelunky, just kind of one of those indie, procedurally generated roguelike games where it's kind of like Super Mario Brothers, but you're going through a cave and exploring. So stuff like that. Indie developers are very talented. Just such a small crew can make such a great game.
I see. Actually, for some reason, I'm thinking like you're real big into like the God of War games or the Dark Souls or the Soulsborne game, as they like to call it. I guess, did you ever play those ones?
Yes, I did. And I mean, I loved every second of it. It was very punishing, very rewarding. And, it's always a daunting thing to look at starting a new game or New Game Plus just because I really want to put myself through all that.
It's not so bad for me, at least, when it would be a New Game Plus. Because afterwards, you at least know like how to go through the map and everything, too. It's not like you just have to hit the enemies a little bit longer this time because it's not just like instant one-shots and everything. So,
yeah.
So, I see what you mean, too. But I think it was more annoying with Dark Souls 2 because they would add additional enemies that were like a red sort of colored enemies, and they just pop out of nowhere at random points. So that was a little annoying. Everything else was it's at least the same spot. The enemies are just got a little bit of a better health pool too. So
Dark Souls 2, I couldn't quite get into as much, just with the bad guys dropping off after so many times going through an area. It just felt like if you lost those points, that's the possibility that they could be gone forever. And I'm just one of those. I'm a weenie. I hang back. I like to buff up my character before moving on too far into the game.
You know what I would say? I was the same way too. And the first time it happened, I'm like, where'd everybody go? That sort of thing too. So, and then I realized actually, you have to be part of a certain group. I think it was like, I forget what it was called. I think it was like some sort of online group, and then the enemies would just keep respawning over and over again after you resetted the area. So, I think that's why. But
yeah.
But you said your video games and I guess everything else kind of inspire your lyrics. I guess what do you write about in your music? Like, what's your lyrical content?
So for the third song, it's the only one that really has any vocal stuff, and it's just a spoken dialogue, about 40 seconds. It's supposed to be kind of like a radio broadcast. Have you ever seen John Carpenter's The Thing with Kurt Russell?
I've heard of The Thing, but I don't think I've ever watched it, to be honest. So
okay.
I think I know they've done like a remake, to be honest. So
yeah,
but go ahead.
There's a scene in which Kurt Russell, he's in a base in Antarctica. There's an alien that it takes the shape and the form of whatever comes into contact with. And so in desperation, he realizes he's not going to make it off the base. And so he leaves a tape recording of himself talking about, this is what we've encountered. It's been so many days. Nobody trusts any other. And just that whole desperation, that whole, like, if you could imagine finding that recording and what that would be like, that dread, seeing the base destroyed, you find that tape, it's like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. And so I just wanted to have that in the song, The Cataclysm, just because I wanted to set a tone for something a little bit more dark and just kind of have that be the turning point of this is the opposition in the middle of the album. That way it could just build up and have the resolve at the end. So, but as far as the rest of the music, it's just inspired by, I read the book that Blade Runner's based off of, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, by Philip K. Dick. Fantastic sci-fi writer. And it's one of those books that I read it and I didn't want it to end. And I can't say that about every book that I've picked up, but that was definitely one of those, that it just kind of put that warm, nostalgic feeling in you as you read it. And it was so different from the movie, but it told a great story in its own right. So things like that, things like Tron, Last Starfighter, I just kind of want to get that feeling of this could almost be a soundtrack to that. This could be a soundtrack to playing video games. Or just sitting back, eyes closed, you could just kind of picture a movie in your mind.
I was gonna say, I think you're gonna strike me as being like a real Star Boys fan at some point. With like I don't know if you would do the intro or everything too, because I think they would flag you bigly or very badly for that one too. So I'm not sure, but I was trying to remember some of the. Oh yeah, there was actually a couple of things from like. Do you know the band Tool?
Yes, I do.
Some of their songs were like real short, but like kind of similar to what you were talking about with the thing with like Kurt Russell. He was like holding that little tape recorder. There was something similar. It was like an answering machine, and then what this particular song was called, "A Message to Harry Barback," I think it was called. I think I'm going to take heat for that too, but it's on their Enema album, so you could go check it out too. It's only like almost 2 minutes long, but basically what it is, it does like nice little paradise sort of theme to it too. It's got like the sea breeze, seagulls, get a nice little piano interlude and something like that. Then you just get this profanity-laced little message going on there too. So it actually speaks in the Italian language too. There's a little bit of a story behind it too, but strongly recommend you check it out. Maybe see if that strikes any ideas up in your head as well. But I guess who do you consider to be like a big influence on your music? Because it seems like you were starting off at first with like classic rock, and it seems like you kind of moved your way into like, was it EDM and R&B and that sort of music?
Yeah. I mean, I first came across this genre in 2015. I was actually studying to become a life insurance sales rep in Indiana, and that is a big test. I mean, I was studying for a month, and every single day I was out where I could get reliable internet anywhere. So it was just the McDonald's down the road. I'm sitting there at the table and just kind of going through music, and I came across a group, Gunship, and their music was just absolutely neon-soaked, full of all those retro themes. They actually had John Carpenter do an intro, kind of like how I had for Cataclysm. John Carpenter did a spoken intro for one of their songs. The song is called Tech Noir. That's the name of the nightclub from Terminator that Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese first meet. And just the way that they interact with their crowd and what they bring to the table musically and lyrically is an inspiration for me, just because the way that they engage. People love the 80s. People just want to engage in it. They want to remember a simpler time, and I could be a part of that. So that was one of my inspirations. Les Paul. I mean, as different as it is from my genre, from what he did, but just the way that he produced music. He invented the multi-track tape recorder, and so that allowed him to layer up all these different guitar parts, where he was doing the drums, he was doing the bass, rhythm guitar, lead guitar, all this. Different technique and different style. And then Mary Ford had her voice stacked up 12 different times. It's like two people could make something that full of sound. I mean, it just made me feel like if they could do it with an old tape recorder, I could do it digitally. So, I mean, it's really cool to dive into their music and just to see that change how people recorded and how they produced music back in the day.
Honestly, when I was thinking about the type of music you were into, I thought you would get into like Linkin Park, because you had been like a teenager when they were first coming out, right?
Yes. And I mean, that's something I played with LimeWire a lot whenever I was in high school. So, I mean, whenever I first started listening to music, I was in 7th grade, and it was the soundtrack to Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So everything 80s. Everybody else is listening to Aaron Carter, Linkin Park, all that stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, Motley Crue, this is so awesome. But as I got through high school and started playing the guitar, I definitely started branching out. And in college, Linkin Park, 30 Seconds to Mars, that kind of alternative rock, post-grunge kind of music. I love that kind of stuff, and I try to include little different bits of genres in my music. I even tried to go so far back as to get some Bach in some of the solos, just because the way that he played the organ is just so unique, and to be able to incorporate that in my music and not necessarily have to play note for note, but just plug it in, it's just something that it could be a gateway for another listener to go into that style of music.
I would say for Bach, I at least remember his cello concertos that he used to have, because actually I played with cello from 3rd grade all the way to high school.
Oh, cool.
And unfortunately, it became a lost art after I went off to college. So
yeah,
I would like to get it back at some point, but it's like so many things. I really just don't have the time to get back into it. But
yes,
there was that. Let's see, you mentioned about Bach. I mean, there was like a time where it would only be like a certain amount of artists. Like it was either like say Linkin Park, for example, or nothing. It'd be Metallica
Yes.
or nothing. I guess did you suffer something similar?
It was something I had a hard time connecting with some of my classmates just because, they asked what I was into. MP3 players were starting to make the scene, and so I show them, and they're just like, what are you listening to? I was like, it's good. I like this. And then they play some of their music for me. It's like, I like that too. I only have, 4 gigabytes to put music. So it was just one of those. I mean, as time went on, I tried to expand my horizons a little bit, go into it with an open mind. But yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge whenever you're a 7th grader bragging about Wang Chung.
Yeah, and I would say those were the primitive ages when we only had
Yes.
so many gigs. It wasn't like the terabytes nowadays that we can roll with.
Yeah.
I don't know how the max is nowadays. I don't know if they go up to like 20 terabytes or something like that. Maybe that's more your extreme computers or hardware or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it was that. And it's funny when you mentioned about LimeWire too, because I knew a friend who would use like Demonoid or stuff like that to like pirate stuff. But he was also pirating off anime, or at least anime that wouldn't like come to the States from Japan too, I guess. Do you watch anime?
I've watched a little bit of it. I think one of the last things I watched was Amazon last year, whenever they had, let's see, what was it? Devil May Cry. I really like that animated series. I like the game, and so just watching the animated series, seeing some of the background story, it was really neat. I love the art style.
I would say, yeah, I do remember another friend who was big into Devil May Cry, but he was like, I think it was Devil May Cry 2 or 3. It was one of those two. I think they get like the little cheat codes. And so you had like the infinite health, the infinite ammo, and all that stuff. So at least it was funny, but it was at least something to do. But I understand too, like, I think it got weird after 5, right? Because that's when they gave Dante like the shorter hair. They took away his gray hair and everything too.
Yes. Yeah, there was a reboot a few years ago that they were wanting to rebuild it from the ground up, but you really haven't seen much with that develop. So I don't know, maybe there's something still in the works, or maybe they just thought we need to go back to the original style.
I would imagine, but I think they also done like a remastered of it for like 1 through 4 and everything too. So I just see if I can get that, because I keep rolling with PS4. I don't feel like upgrading to PS5. But you also strike me like you would be a PC guy as well.
Not as much. I love the performance. I love seeing the videos of what people are able to squeeze out of their PCs. But I like to be able to make ends meet too. I cannot afford to do PC gaming to the level that some people would.
I see. All right. So you did talk about some of your gear that you use for your music production. Is there anything else you use? Like, do you use a specific microphone to kind of... Because I'm actually curious, how did you do the little audio back? Was it just you talking into it, or I guess how'd you do that?
So just a cheapo USB microphone I got from Amazon a few years ago. I think it was about $20. I can't even remember what brand it was. It was something so far removed, but it was just, I ran it through an effects filter, just to kind of get that distorted old recording sound to it. Just kind of took the mids way down, and I think I slowed the tape down just a little bit, get my voice sound a little bit more the hero that's worn out and telling his story and what his fight has been up to that point.
I see. You don't use an audio interface, do you? Or do you use like a mixer?
I use an audio interface. Bitwig is the digital audio workshop that I use.
I didn't mention about Bitwig. I just didn't know if it was like an audio interface plugged into your computer and then it just goes into Bitwig itself. So, because I actually roll with the Focusrite, but this one is the 18i20. I know a lot of people talk about the 2i2 was always a good one in case you're like starting off small. So I didn't know that's what you're doing, because it seems like you run on a tight budget. So
everything's just plugged right into the computer.
I see. So I guess there's no need for like bass traps or any sort of soundproofing on your walls.
No, nothing quite like that. But like I said, this was just something, see if I liked it. And I mean, I definitely have a couple other ideas for a few other songs. So anything else that comes along, I might try to step it up a little bit.
I see. So I guess let's get into the challenges a little bit, like what an indie artist goes through. So I guess when you first started out, what was the challenges you faced, and then what's the challenges you face currently as you try to progress your, I guess, career? Because I don't know if this is still kind of just a side hobby, just trying to see if you can get any sort of money out of it.
So starting off, with this being a solo project, it's one of those, you have a blank canvas right in front of you. The world is at your fingertips, and just trying to come up with ideas. And it's one thing to come up with an idea, but an idea that other people might like. And so just trying to find those sounding boards, trying to find those people that could give you that constructive criticism, just because this isn't a genre for everybody. So, I mean, I can't just talk to anybody about my music and what I'm working on. So just making sure that I didn't go too overboard whenever I was first starting off. And learning music theory. I'm very grateful for everything that you can find just at a simple Google search, just finding out what notes go into a certain key, different ideas for how to carry out a solo. But that was definitely a challenge because I'd never composed anything before this. So, and more recently, it's just kind of doing the outreach, trying to find that fan base. Instagram definitely has gained a lot of traction just because I have images that go with the music. And so if people like the images, then it's almost kind of they should like the music. And then Facebook has been good. I've never understood Twitter, so that doesn't have as many followers, but just doing what I can to keep all that going.
I think Twitter is now called X or whatever they want to call it. I don't know. It's getting weird too. I'm not understanding Elon Musk at this point too. So, I mean, to each his own. But I think I'm backing away from Twitter now. I tend to find more relaxation within Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So those are the things I use. But I guess for your pictures, is it ones you create? Do you use a little Photoshop or Lightroom?
So for a lot of them, it is AI generated. It's Wombo by Dream, and it's one of those you put in. I think you have at least 160 characters to type in a description of what you want. And it's just one of those you keep on refining the image. Some of them are actual photographs that I've taken and just ran through the filters that they offer, just to get the exact effect that I want. And I mean, it's produced a lot of powerful images. And in the process of making the music, I would have the music inspire the art, and then the art inspire the music. So it's just kind of a cycle with that. And I think I ended up producing close to 1,000 images, looking for that one perfect album cover. And I feel like I found it, and I have 1,999 other ones I'm trying to put on Instagram, just kind of to keep that interest going. So it's been neat just to see what it could come up with, but at the same time, it's like, that's freaky that computers are coming up with those images.
Yeah, I know what you mean too, because AI seems to be I would say it's like the 50-50 territory, if I know what I mean, because there's a love-hate sort of relationship too, because in your case, it makes your job a little bit easier with you just plug in a photograph, add in words how you want the picture to be described, and then it puts it all for you. But then you run to AI that's generate music or maybe generate scripts for movies and that sort of thing too. I guess, do you see it impacting the music scene outside maybe just trying to do album covers and stuff like that?
I definitely do. One of the plugins that I actually came across, and I just read the description of it, and I mean, it just left me with mixed feelings, was something that it would produce a melody, a bass line, do rhythm part for you. And all you had to do was plug in the tempo and the key, and it would come up with it. And I think that there needs to be a certain level of user input whenever it comes to creativity, because how do you judge a computer that doesn't have a soul, that doesn't have a single thought? It's doing your prompt, doesn't have an imagination, and it creates something. I mean, is that art? Is that music? You can make arguments for it either way, but it definitely is if it got good enough, would we still need musicians? And that's a kind of terrifying thought, just because there's a lot of expression that I don't think how sophisticated the computers could get would be able to capture what the human factor could put into it.
I want to say it's going to start turning into the Terminator effect too, where the machines finally take over, that sort of thing too.
Yes.
But unfortunately, they don't generate the conscience or have a morality or ethical compass. So
right.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's just hope it was a good movie, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger saying some badass lines here and there too. So let's leave it at that. So let's hope for the music scene. Let's hope it doesn't get too crazy. But I guess did COVID kind of help you in a way, kind of getting started with this whole music project? Or was it just something you just say one day hey, let's do it?
So COVID, I was out of work for about 11 weeks because of COVID. I work in the entertainment, hospitality industry. I work in surveillance. And we were out for about 11 weeks before the doors were open back, and we even had anyone come in. So I had a lot of downtime. My wife was a 911 dispatcher, and I was doing everything I could because she was considered an essential worker. So anything that we needed for the house, I was the one that was going out. She was going to work. And so with all my downtime, I just thought, I could play through Resident Evil a few times in a day and see if I could get all those trophies. Or I could do something creative with my time. I could do something productive. And so I worked on different techniques of playing the guitar, worked on finger picking just because that was something I've always been curious about, and just kind of started on the fundamentals of that, kind of worked at playing on the keyboard a little bit more, and just spent some time developing that, even sketching and drawing, things that I did whenever I was younger, like you've talked about, not always having the time to do the things that you're passionate about. So it definitely engaged me and made me want more of that creativity in my life, just because even if other people don't get something out of it, it's self-expression, and it's something that, it's a good stress reliever. It makes you critically think, it challenges you. So that's how I use most of my time. I did play through Resident Evil a few times on my time off, but it was a good time.
I would say, did you finally get that platinum trophy, or is that something you're still reaching for?
Very close. I think one day I did play it through 3 times doing the speed run of can you beat it in 3 hours on the hardest difficulty and only use a couple health kits. Man, my brain was fried that day.
Unfortunately, I respect gamers, but at the same time, I'm like, why do you want to speedrun through the game, to be honest? I find it more fun just going around, and in the case of Bloodborne, because I actually got platinum with Bloodborne. That was actually my first time getting a platinum trophy. But actually, that one you would say is more the easier one. It takes a little time, but it's more the easier ones compared to other games where you have to shoot someone from a distance with a handgun or something like that. So I can see why. But for me, I take my time. That's me. I'm not rushing through it. They're I see something, I'm attacking it right there, or it's I will run towards the nearest living thing and kill it. That sort of thing. So
yeah, I think it was that afternoon I yelled down the hallway, "Hey, I beat the game again for the 3rd time," and my wife's like, "Okay." and at the end of it's just kind of what am I doing? I'm just trying to get the trophy. I'm not having fun doing this. So,
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I guess, did your wife, did she get up close to people who had COVID real bad? I guess they were putting those little, I want to say containment centers, because I imagine there was a lot of the plexiglass up and everyone's dressed in the hazmat suits and everything. Was she that
with
sort of worker?
With 911 dispatch, she was just at a call center in a basement of a county building. And so she didn't have a whole lot of interaction with people in person, but she would get those phone calls of people that were having the respiratory problems, and she would have to tell the paramedics they were heading over there, law enforcement heading over there, this person's tested positive, or they think that they have, and so they have to put on the PPEs, do all the precautions. And back in November, she thinks that she heard a couple people with some of the cases before they even knew what COVID was. There's people with respiratory issues that just their fever spiked, flu-like symptoms, and it was hard. It was a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, I can imagine too. Especially, it was pretty consistent. And have you guys lived in Indiana your whole lives, or did you live there just kind of recently?
Yeah, we've lived here our whole lives.
So I guess, how bad was it in Indiana?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the problem was just because people in a smaller town just kind of feel like they know what's best. Even though CDC is saying one thing, you have the government saying one thing, they feel like they could go out with protection. And it was cyclical. You could see people going to sporting events, and then a couple of weeks later things spike. After a major holiday, people would still get together. It never really slowed down up until just this last year. It's unfortunate. We lost some family members to it, and had some friends that were afflicted pretty rough.
I guess, did you have any brushes with it too?
I only tested positive one time, and before I took the home test, I remember having the thermometer in my mouth, and I laid down on the floor in our bathroom and just thought, I could fall asleep here. This is normal. This is normal. I do this all the time. But, it was a couple days of just it kicking my butt and then finally bounced back. How about yourself? Did you
You know what?
Every,
I always kind of laugh because in a way, I always remember like what day it was when I started working from home, which was March 15th of 2020. I almost go 3 years without having it. And what happens is, my parents, we go to Nashville for about a week. We come back and we get it. So I don't know.
it's one of those things.
You can't let your guard down. That's the thing. So
Yes.
I don't know. But I'm sorry for your losses too. And
Thank you.
it's good to see you made it through. And looks like you still got a bit of a long music journey ahead of you. So it's good to have you along for the ride, buddy.
Thank you.
So let's see. What about that? So I guess in terms of your ideas, in terms of like making a song, I guess walk us through your process of like how you create a song.
So the first song, it was just playing around with the software, just seeing what all the options were. And I found a couple different patches for the keyboard that it had a really good sound for the chords I was laying down. So I just hit the record button, laid that down, and laid down some drum bits. And then I would replicate the chord progression for about 10 minutes and then just find the notes within the chords and then would come up with a melody and just kind of splice it all together, refine it a little bit. Second song, it did the same thing, just thinking, well, maybe that was a fluke with the first song. And it got to the point of like, okay, I feel like this could kind of tell a story through the music. I had the option. I could have done lyrics. I feel like I'm enough of a vocalist that I could capture. But at the same time, this being my first music project, I didn't want to get bogged down with trying to find ideas, trying to find, find the notes for singing. So just stuck with that. But then it was just kind of like taking an idea. Like with Cataclysm, I wanted something that had a darker sound, something that was very Terminator, very end of Blade Runner sound. Wanted to have something that was kind of like a love score. And so what better than borrowing a little bit from Pachelbel's canon. And it was just, it's a lot of time just finding the right voice, the right effects to run through it. But in between working on it, I would put the music on my phone, and on my commute to and from work, I just listened to it. Let my wife listen to it a couple of times, see if she had any feedback. Just go from there. Just try to build something that's pleasing to the ear.
I would say the constructive criticism at sometimes is a little bit tough, because when I was like doing drum covers, I was posting it just on my Facebook and our social media pages. I'm actually like, here, just give me some sort of feedback or something like that. And unfortunately, most people are responding happen to be your family members too, so of course they're going to respond, be like, "Oh, you did a nice job," that sort of thing too. So,
yeah.
And at the same time, that actually drags you down because you feel like, okay, for some reason I'm doing something right, and then somebody, whenever you finally get that criticism, I feel like it kind of pulls you down in a way. At least how that was with me at first, and then afterwards I kind of got the hang of it too. So, I guess, was it a little hard getting the constructive feedback in the beginning for you?
It can be. Whenever I started out, I'd play a song for somebody without giving them too much context, because I want people to go into it fresh and they just hear it for the first time and whatever they think, whatever they imagine. And I would hear all the different ideas of like, oh, this makes me think of just of water flowing. This makes me think of a bird flying in the sky. I want it to make you think of Harrison Ford, chasing down androids. But okay, I guess that kind of works. But then with some of the more technical stuff, like, oh, it would sound better if the drums were a little bit more this beat or this rhythm, or maybe build this part up a little bit more. You still want to keep it your own, and you don't want to get bogged down too much in the details. But, it was just kind of finding that happy medium of, like, sometimes your initial thought isn't always the best, and the more you listen to it, you kind of agree with them. Of like, okay, yeah, that works. And so it was just finding that common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back to Blade Runner, are you talking about the original one, or are we also talking about 2049?
Yes. Mostly the original one. I like what they did with 2049, but that original one is always going to be my favorite.
I would say I did see 2049, and I think at first it was kind of my fault because I didn't see like the original one that came out way back when, and so I was actually going into it blind. I felt like it felt a little slow at times, but the story and everything else at least felt good too. So I think if I had at least watched the original, I think maybe I would have given a better critique of the 2049, to be honest, too. So,
yeah.
But you're pulling in all the old timers too, so you had to pull in Harrison Ford. Then you have to torture him again with the new Indiana Jones the Dial of Destiny,
Yes.
those ones. I guess
Have you seen it yet?
I have not. In fact, I think I stopped after the Last Crusade, to be honest. I think, actually, no, what I lied. I think we did see, what was it, the Crystal Skull? Was that what it was called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think at that point we're feeling like, it's too cheesy. I think he should just retire at this point. Hang up his hat and his whip and everything too. So, unfortunately, I think it becomes a little bit of a money grab because, you notice it too with Star Wars. They always find something else to keep the whole thing going, to be honest.
And that's something I grew up loving Star Wars, and whenever they came out with the Clone Wars, I was kind of excited for it, watched a couple episodes, and I mean, I don't want to invest all that time just to see that in between, that tiny little section between episode 2 and episode 3. And then all the other series that they have coming out, I mean, they did a great job with Mandalorian, but some of the other things, it's like, I don't have the time or the attention span to sit down and watch all of these and take notes of like, oh, but is that canon? Does that line up with that? I mean, at a certain point, it's like it's a flavor for everybody. I don't have to have all the flavors.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think, in my opinion, the Mandalorian like fell off after season 2, at least according to what my dad said. I think it was the whole thing with was her name Gina Carano? Was that her name? The actress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It all seemed to fall apart after they had let her go for, I guess, something she had said. So I don't want to get into it too much, but it seemed like that was the beginning of the end, as they would probably say. So
yeah.
I think my dad had also seen the Book of Boba Fett. I don't know if they do season 2 or 3, or was it just one season?
I'm honestly not sure at this point. I know I need to watch it, but I couldn't tell you where they're at.
You know, on Facebook now, I'm actually seeing like these comic book ideas too, where they're showing Darth Vader in like these random places at times, just watching him go around being a badass and everything. So,
yeah.
I mean, the artwork's cool and all, but I'm thinking like, does this really make any sense, or is this like so many things in between, like New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, that sort of thing? So,
yeah.
I don't know. People do what they want. We'll just let them go, have fun with it. But I guess in terms of advice, I guess what would you give any sort of advice to like other indie musicians who are trying to like start off?
Yeah. Whenever you sent me that list of questions, this is one that really stood out to me, and I feel very strongly about. The biggest thing I could offer is just don't get discouraged. Whenever you're starting off, you're going to have all kinds of doubt as to, am I good enough to do this? If I do this, who's going to be interested in listening to the music? You just have to create for yourself, and there will be listeners. It's just a matter of finding them. Throughout my creative experiences, whether it's playing music or dabble a little bit in creative writing or drawing, painting, I've had people say so much as, I don't know if I see anything creative coming from you. And not a paraphrase, I've actually had someone say that to me. And you try not to take it too personally because it's like, well, who are you to say? But at the same time, you kind of wonder, you have that self-doubt, maybe they see something in me that I don't see. And so I've lost some time in learning how to play piano even. That was something I put off just because comments people have made of like, well, why would you want to do that? Why would I not want to learn how to play a new instrument? But it's just one of those things. You have to create for yourself. And if you have the patience, you can accomplish just about anything you set your mind to. I know that's very cliche to say, but it's like you have a blank canvas in front of you. You take all the time you want. If you mess up, well, you know what not to do the next time. So it's just, as far as being an indie musician, just pick yourself up. Don't be afraid to start on any kind of project.
I see. I guess, have you been in touch with like any other artists to like see if you could do like maybe a collab together?
I actually have through Instagram. I had someone in Belgium. He reached out to me and said, hey, I have these ideas for songs, and they're on SoundCloud if you want to take a listen to them. And so far, we've collaborated on 3 different songs. There's a 4th one that we're working on. He's very talented. He's very good. It's almost kind of a wonder, why do you need me? You already had a very strong idea. But it's just, we work well together. We have ideas that he has kind of a rhythm in the background, and I can put a melody over top of it that just, you think that we were playing together, that we were jamming in an office together. It was pretty neat.
Jam session on an online basis, we should probably say. But
yes.
I guess, did you know his name? It's actually
yeah, his.
I'm sorry, I was going to say a friend of mine actually reached out to me. His name was Shroom T, and he told me about these 125 artists who Actually, I've like recently did their own little music and everything too, and he sent me like the Spotify link and everything too. I have that link down in the description below. But I think like, boy, 125. There's a lot of people out here, to be honest. So it's like, who else out here is not getting this sort of exposure? So I'm sorry, but what was the guy from Belgium's name?
His username on Instagram is Zan1986, Zann 1986, and his first name's Ben. Last name I probably need to practice a couple times before I could try to say it. But I mean, he's very talented. It's been a good challenge just because you have ideas for your songs and then you work with somebody else. You kind of have to have that give and take of, well, I want this to sound like this. I think it should sound like that. You have to. It's kind of like married life. You kind of have to find that happy medium.
Happy middle ground, as we probably like to say too.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. And best of luck on your journey right there, I guess. Do you guys plan on releasing an album soon together?
I think we're looking at doing an EP, just having maybe 4 or 5 songs, 10, 12 minutes, just to kind of get some exposure for him, some exposure for me. And, I mean, really for me, it's just about the experience. I don't care if it's, if I could quit my day job tomorrow, okay, maybe I might be okay with that. But it's about creating music and creating content that people can get into. And if it inspires other people, terrific. That's what music is all about. It's just being able to inspire people to take them places and maybe let them think, hey, I have a shot at that. I could do that too.
Were you guys in like 2 specific different genres, or were you guys kind of like in the same ballpark?
We're in the same ballpark, so that definitely makes it a lot easier. He's into that whole nostalgic retro scene, and so it's just, it definitely flows.
That's pretty sweet. Can't wait to hear it when it comes out. So make sure to keep us posted, y'all. All right.
Yeah.
So Nick, we breezed through the questions pretty well. I guess we'll jump into some fun ones right here. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So start with the first one. What is your favorite food?
Favorite food? Summertime always makes me think of shish kebabs. For my birthday's in June, and so my dad loved playing on the grill. He would always make shish kebabs, and so nothing better than just the steak, the vegetable medley, all the marinade that goes with it. It's great this time of year.
Was there a specific kind of shish kebab, or is it like the ones with the steaks and I'm trying to remember the last one I had, but I think it was always a mixture of a blend of like all sorts of meats on it too. Is that what you mean?
He would do steak on there, and then he would do like the little cherry tomatoes, onions, summer squash, and I forget what marinade he used. But it was just all that put together. He let it soak overnight and just throw it on the grill. Perfect.
I guess, did they do any sort of like farmers markets or any sort of like I want to kind of equate to like Pitmasters, which was like those, it was like a TV show with like barbecue joints and everything, or they were bringing like these various barbecue makers that would just come in and like make their own foods and everything too. Did they do any sort of festivities like that in your neck of the woods?
Yes, they do. We have different festivals. I live in Orange County, Indiana, and so in the springtime we have the Dogwood Festival in Orleans. Mitchell has Persimmon Festival at the end of September. And in my hometown, Seymour, they have Oktoberfest, and that's usually the first weekend in October. And it's food booth after food booth. It's a good excuse to just go and have lunch and dinner out. And, it's almost like a homecoming, running into all your classmates and teachers from yesteryear.
I would say that Oktoberfest is probably an excuse to get drunk, to be honest. Or to let out your German side, as we like to say. I don't know, are you part German at all? Or are you mostly just, I'm assuming Italian because of the last name.
Yes. Italian and Polish on my dad's side, and Irish, and I think a little bit of Native American on my mom's side. So, Euromut with a little bit of Native American.
Oh, that's pretty sweet too. All right.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing too is like you also see like church festivals who would like do those little things too, like little carnivals and anything like that. Do they do something like that?
Yes. We also have like Pumpkin Festival and Fall Festival around here. And so, different church booths set up. And Oktoberfest in Seymour, they have apple turnovers, and they sell out every year, and their proceeds go to youth mission trips. So it's a good cause. It's a good reason to hop in line and get something tasty.
That's a party. That's the thing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty sweet. All right, for the next one, what is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? A couple weeks ago, my wife and I just watched the brand new Super Mario Brothers movie, and that absolutely made up for what I saw whenever I was a little kid in theaters. That It was very clever the way that they threw in all the Easter eggs, all the throwbacks to all the games, and just it had a great story to it, great visuals. I think that kids could watch that and be excited to hop into the games. So that's one that we saw recently that it's like that was a good movie to go see.
I was always more into the Super Smash Brothers, to be honest. That was what me and a friend of mine would do.
Yeah.
They really got to like the Mario Karts or anything like that, or when they mixed it up with Donkey Kong and everything. So,
yeah.
But what were you gonna say?
But yeah, Nintendo Switch has been a lot of fun just because there are all those different Mario, Donkey Kongs that you could just go back and forth in between. My wife and I will take turns playing some of those older games and diving into that.
That's pretty sweet. It's funny with Facebook too, especially with like I think if you get to like say Lord of the Rings, for instance, it'll start showing you like all various posts would be like quotes from the movie, or would give you the history that Tolkien had written about this and that as well too. Do you get those various posts from time to time?
Yes, I do. I like seeing the community and some of the different memes that they come up with. One doesn't simply walk into Mordor, or my precious around Valentine's Day. I like those. I mean, just because it's cool to see a community rally around such a classic as Lord of the Rings.
I guess did you watch all the Lord of the Rings?
Yes, and embarrassingly enough, it was only this last year that I watched through the Hobbit movies for the first time. And, I mean, those were very well done. Did you have a preference between Lord of the Rings or Hobbit?
I think looking at it then, at least how it would tie in, because The Hobbit was meant to be the prequel. So it was trying to make sure it like tied in to like, Lord of the Rings when it eventually came around. So unfortunately, when it's making references to like characters who would come in later on, I think like this was actually 60 years before, so I'm making sure this makes sense to me. Otherwise, this is going to be a little confusing, or otherwise we're going to have to point that out when we put our little criticisms down and everything too about it. Lord of the Rings, I think they did a lot of the extended editions, so I think Lord of the Rings had a bit more feel to it, to be honest. There were good things about The Hobbit, but I think if I had to pick between the two, Lord of the Rings, all the way. All right. And what's currently your favorite drink? And alcoholic first. What's your favorite alcoholic drink first?
I like Blue Moon. I know a few other people are kind of like, oh, why would you like that? It's like, I like the citrus taste to it. That was whenever I came of age and was out at a restaurant, ordered fish and chips, and I was kind of looking for something on the beer menu. I don't know what anything tastes like. I don't know what's good. And someone recommended Blue Moon and came out with a little slice of orange in it. It's like, I like this. This is pretty neat. And it paired perfectly with that. And so around Oktoberfest, I have a tradition of I'll watch the movie Strange Brew with Rick Moranis and Dave Thompson. And it's one of those guilty pleasure movies that I could watch every year until the day I die and never get tired of it. And I'll have a beer while I'm watching that, just kind of get that full Oktoberfest feel. And I like that one. I branched out. I tried a few other ones. Was it Bubblegum Head? That's kind of got that citrus. It's the IPA. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
I would say I'm not crazy about IPAs. I think I tried a couple, but I was never crazy about them.
That one is tolerable for me. And then, every once in a while, I'll try something else. Amaretto around Christmas time or summertime, mixing lemonade with blue raspberry vodka, but that's also a dangerous combination.
Yeah, I can probably imagine. I think Blue Moon's more of like an acquired taste, kind of similar to how gin is. Because I think when I tried it, I wasn't crazy about it. Sorry, but I'm more into like the sweeter drinks. But unfortunately, those are your more heavier ones. So they get like the Long Island iced teas and those ones, or the ones that get like curacao or the peach schnapps. I would say I'm a sweetheart. We'll say it like that. I'm a sweetheart. That's the thing too. So.
Yeah, whenever it starts tasting like Kool-Aid, you definitely are in trouble because it'd be easy to overindulge.
Yeah, I can probably imagine. And I guess favorite non-alcoholic drink?
Summertime, I like Arnold Palmer's, the half tea, half lemonade mix. It's just one of those. It's refreshing. It's easy to make, keeps in the fridge. I don't drink a whole lot of sodas. And then, throughout the week, I'll have a couple cups of coffee too. And just... that's what keeps me going.
I'm trying to remember the last time I actually did have an Arnold Palmer, but I think we always mixed in like maybe a little vodka with it. I think then it becomes a John Daly, right?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. All right, so those are good choices. And the last one, what's currently your favorite song?
Favorite song? Gosh. I mean, I think at this point I have about 20,000 songs on my phone right now. I'm old school. Whenever I like music, I like having it just because growing up, you didn't have Wi-Fi to stream music. But, Chain Gang in 1974. Their newest album, they have a lot of good tracks on there, and so that's one. Whenever I'm driving to work, I leave the house about 4:30 in the morning to be at the time clock by 5 a.m. And so it's a drive that no one's on the road. I just need something that's just kind of chill and down tempo. Chain Gang 1974 works for me. I like it.
That's an interesting one.
It's kind of more. It's alternative by today's standard, not like 90s alternative, but a little bit pop, a little bit chill. I like it. And then shoegaze and static wave is a genre I've kind of been getting into as well. Droning guitars, keyboards, kind of muddy vocals. But again, it's one of those you could sit down and listen with a pair of headphones and just like really get into it, or you could just have it on in the background and kind of sets a mood.
I think it's funny when you mention about genres because it seems like everyone's got like a specific name for them. So I guess what would they, categorize your genre?
I like to think retrowave. I mean, anything that's not crap, I'm okay taking. But retrowave, just kind of that nostalgic. I don't think it doesn't branch into like synthwave or. I mean, there's all different kinds of waves that dreamwave, vaporwave, but retrowave, just because that's kind of the umbrella term that goes for heavy synthesizer, drum kit kind of feel.
Actually, it's funny you mention that about new wave as well because I think there was actually a concert happening not too far from my house the other weekend, and my mom is like, "Why would they call it new wave?" Especially when it was like something that came out of the '80s, for instance.
Yeah.
So I think like, why don't they just call it new wave, that sort of thing too, the double wave, that sort of thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious who does come up with the names at first, and then it just seems like fly afterwards. I was like moths to a flame, as they would probably say. So, all right, that's pretty sweet. So, Nick, we're almost near the end of my podcast right here, and I guess did you have any questions for me, or any final words you want to say before we jump into the final one?
I definitely appreciate you taking the time for this. It's been really good to be able to talk with someone about the project that and just be able to put myself out there a little bit and explain a little bit the guy behind the music.
Absolutely, too. It's people like you who make the world go around, that sort of thing. And then I would say it's always daunting, especially when, as we were saying, like people who are just starting out, too. And it's always funny because you need music and you also need food, especially when you get like the restaurants who have the music coming through like the loudspeakers, or they have a band or a DJ or whatever just playing on there, too. So I'm like, why is those careers always pay so little, to be honest, especially when they are so needed? So, yeah. I don't know. Hopefully the trend gets a little bit better at some point, right, too? Otherwise, I think we might have to go on strike, like what's going on there in Hollywood and everything. So,
right. We'll see Skynet taking over writing some music, too.
Hopefully. But not the AI. We'll leave the AI out there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's jump into the final one. So given what COVID has done, I think people need some sort of hope these days, or at least to like, find some sort of way to get more into a post-COVID world. So the last question goes like this. What sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there as we move into a post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think it's kind of talking, like whenever I was talking about finding an audience, if you make the music, people are always going to be willing to listen. And just seeing the leaps and bounds of technology just in the last few years of how you are able to connect. In VR, in the metaverse, you can have virtual conversations with people around the world, share ideas, exchange concepts, and have a virtual workspace. Right now, we're having a conversation states away, miles and miles away. I'm able to collaborate with someone in Belgium. There's always going to be a way for you to reach out to your audience, and there is nothing that matches the feel of having a live performance. But if we are to the point where we need to start finding those alternative options, they're there. and message of hope is just try to carry that passion on. I mean, it's hard sometimes, especially whenever, like you said, it's not as financially viable for some people. I mean, I'm still working a 40-hour-a-week job, and I just released an album. I remember the day after kind of waking up and being like, yeah, I make music, but I also work for a living. But it's just, you have to keep plugging away. You have to find what you're passionate about and keep on doing it.
It's always like you woke up next morning and be like, did I just release an album? That sort of thing. So
it still doesn't feel real. It does not feel real at all.
yeah, I can probably understand. I mean, it would be almost like,
Yeah.
was that actually a dream or something like that? That crazy thing. So
Yeah.
hey, maybe an idea for some lyric content right there. So and spoken like a true prodigy. All right. So Nick, we've reached the end of my podcast right here. We breezed through and got a nice hour into. This was a nice chit chat and everything. So I guess, did you have any shout outs or any final words you want to say before we jump into it? Or I guess close out. Sorry.
Yeah, like I said, Zan, 1986. He is a fantastic up-and-coming musician from Belgium. Jessica Ravencraft bought her music on Bandcamp this afternoon. I'm going to be listening to it tomorrow. Just anybody that's making music, you guys are awesome. You inspire people like me. I'll buy a little $50 keyboard and try my hand at it. So just keep on. That's what keeps the world going round.
And I guess, how can people reach you?
Through Facebook, through Instagram. I have a link tree that all my music's on there. If you search Sunset 89 on Amazon, iTunes, it'll pop up. And I'm in the process of getting everything condensed where you just find it all on one spot. So reach out through Instagram, Sunset_89. Drop me a message, like on my pictures. So conversation.
Absolutely. All right. So everyone, my guest today was Nick DiBlasi, hailing from Indiana. He's just recently put out an album, so make sure you go to Spotify or any other music channels. Are you just on Spotify, or do you get on like iTunes and Amazon Music?
I'm on all of them. I'm on iTunes, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, all the good ones.
All right. So make sure you go support his music on all those channels. Make sure you hit him up on the socials. Nick, you stay safe. Good luck on your music journey. Stay tuned,
Thank
y'all.
you. Take care.